Tonight on 2020, the happy couple devoted to God and to each other.
He truly loved her to death.
So why was this respected church leader accused of her murder?
We didn't have the murder weapon. We didn't have any forensic evidence.
Was the wrong man facing jail?
You know what happened.
What happened to the preacher's wife?
And now, Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. 2 weeks ago, a California man was in court facing justice for the murder of his wife. He was not your usual suspect, a family man and a devoted Jehovah's Witness who preached the Word of God door to door. So, was he guilty? Or were police guilty of pursuing the wrong man? You decide as Jim Avila tells what happened to the preacher's wife.
Master bedroom, bathroom. Master bedroom, bed. Blood stain on the pillow.
A spring morning, police rummaged through what's been reported as a home invasion. The peaceful, pious world of Jehovah's Witness minister Kelle Jarka, his wife Isabelle, and their 2 children, now a frantic mess. Their upscale home in the faraway Los Angeles suburb of Murrieta is now filled with disheveled drawers, ransacked cabinets, and more.
911, what is your emergency? Hello?
Yes, can we put in a robbery?
You were just robbed?
Yes.
Dew is still on the lawn at 8:45 that morning as Kelle Jarka returns from a neighborhood coffee shop to find what he says are all the signs of a burglary gone wrong.
I could hear the baby was crying, so I yelled out to Isabelle, Isabelle, what's wrong with the baby? And then as I proceeded up the stairs is when I found her.
So you go up to the top landing, that's where your master bedroom is? And what do you see there?
It's where I found Isabelle lying on the landing by the bedroom.
Okay, what happened?
Somebody, I don't know, I just got home. I pulled in, somebody around the house.
Okay, was somebody there that held you at gunpoint, or were you burglarized?
I was not there.
You weren't there?
No.
Okay, so your house has been burglarized.
But as you were about to hear, 30 seconds into that 911 call, Kelle Jarka reveals one more detail.
I think my wife has been killed.
What, sir?
I think my wife has been killed.
Okay, what are you saying?
I think my wife has been killed also in the burglary. She was home alone with me.
Okay, do you see her?
She's lying on the ground and there's blood underneath of her.
Okay, is she breathing?
No.
Is she bleeding?
Yes.
Is there anyone else in the house?
No, my kids are at my in-laws next door.
What happened?
I walked in the house. The baby was crying. I picked him up, went upstairs to look for my wife. And the house has been everything's torn up.
I tried to move her and shake her, you see. She responded. She didn't.
Did you talk to her at all?
Yeah.
What were you saying to her?
Isabelle, you okay?
Kelle? Okay, Kelle, take a deep breath, okay? I have a lot of people on the way to see you, okay? Where's your baby? Kelle, where's your baby?
The terrifying screams you hear are from Isabelle's mother, Tina Canchola, who lives across the street from the Jarkas. Kelle runs to her house as he's talking to 911.
Kelle, who's that in the background?
It's my mother-in-law.
And when I got to the last stair, I said, Isabelle, sweetie, answer me. Can you hear me? Move if you hear me. And she couldn't. She was already dead. But I didn't want to believe it.
But she knows it's true and is already seething. The police order her down from the landing, and in the seconds it takes to walk down the stairs, Tina Canchola has made a snap decision about the murderer with no evidence.
Right away, I figured that he would kill her.
So what did you say to him?
I say, you kill her. I know that you kill her.
And he, of course, said, no, I didn't. Of course not.
He didn't say nothing. He just looked at me like this.
Why wouldn't he deny it?
Because he knew that it was true.
But why the rush to judgment? Is Tina just an angry mother-in-law who hates Kelle, and so she ignores all the evidence of a break-in? That's not the Kelle Jarka everyone else knew, a man so in love with his wife, he'd give her anything. This is their second anniversary party.
We were young. She liked to joke around.
So in other words, next year.
Very kind, considerate person, happy. Of course, I thought she was beautiful.
For Kelle, it is love at first sight, a Midwestern boy smitten by a California girl he met at church.
Kelle was like always pursuing Isabelle. he was trying everything.
Isabelle's family says she likes being pursued. His family saw that too.
Every time Isabelle said, Kelle, I need this or I want that, he'd be like, okay, here dear, here's the credit card.
A bracelet. Nice going, Kelle, making us look bad, getting 2 presents for the wife, huh?
He always put her first in his life.
He truly, absolutely loved her to death.
A devoted couple to each other and to their God. Jehovah's Witnesses, the 40-year-old Isabelle, a stay-at-home mom who loved to shop and spent the rest of her time preaching door to door. Proud that her husband was made an elder in their congregation.
We are very dedicated to God. Matthew 6:33 says, seek the kingdom first and all the other things will be added to you. And everything always works out.
And things are working out. Nearly 20 years of marriage. The Jarka family lives well on Kelle's salary as a contractor. Their brand new house in one of the safest communities in America could be considered a perfect target for burglars. It's filled with the best of appliances. In the garage, 2 luxury SUVs and a pickup truck for work. And in a nearby marina, a 36-foot powerboat for weekends. Until, on that spring morning, Kelle walks in on tragedy.
It's obvious her head was on the pillow, that she had to have been asleep when this happened.
It's a vicious killing. Crime scene photos show what looks to lead detective Danny Martin like a crime of passion. Isabelle Jarka was bludgeoned to death with 11 blows to the face and head. Overkill.
It doesn't look like she was able to defend herself from the initial blow. And then it looks like she tried to crawl away from the assault, and she was repeatedly being struck in the head with a blunt force object. And when she got to the hallway, she just couldn't fight anymore. And the blows became so severe that she just collapsed.
And since 30% of all women murdered are killed by their husbands or boyfriends, police are already thinking the mother-in-law may be right.
He's not crying, he's not emotional in any way. He seemed very cold and just emotionless.
When 2020 returns, the cold husband on the hot seat.
Why would you want your wife dead?
For 39-year-old Kelle Jarka, it has been a day like no other. He finds his wife brutally murdered after he makes a trip for coffee.
I think my wife has been killed.
Calls 911 and is immediately accused of murder by his mother-in-law, and then rushed off to the police station where the cops let him sit so they can watch his body language.
He's in the interview room 45 minutes after finding his wife, brutally beaten, and there's no emotion, kind of just looking at the text messages, moving his arms.
I want to see, was his posture closed? Is he trying to hide something?
Did you get a feeling he was trying to help you?
No, I had a feeling that he was trying to limit his exposure.
So when you're sitting there, why are you acting that way?
I was in shock. I was concerned about what had happened, and I didn't know what to think.
Now, the prosecution and even the police believe your affect was a demonstration of your guilt. Why is that not true?
Because I'm not guilty of it, of course, number one. And I think our emotional state changes, especially under a dire circumstance, under a shocking event.
I didn't hear anything. When I came home, that's what it was. Listen to me. Why would you want your wife dead? I don't.
Detective Phil Gomez is not buying it, and within an hour of this 10-hour session, he tries to provoke Jarka into confessing.
I think maybe you had something to do with this, and the evidence tells the truth. The evidence on the body, the evidence in the house, the evidence, the hairs, the skin, things like that.
Problem is, detectives at the scene are coming up empty. All that evidence Detective Gomez is threatening is nowhere to be found. and Assistant District Attorney Burke Strunsky knows he has little to work with.
This was a completely circumstantial case. We didn't have the murder weapon. We didn't have an eyewitness. We didn't have any forensic evidence that directly tied Mr. Jarka to the actual murder itself.
But while, as the detective says, evidence doesn't lie, the lack of it can be artfully framed by a prosecutor.
She is gushing blood from her head, and yet he doesn't have a drop of blood on him.
You believe that the fact that there was no blood on him was actually indication of guilt. Why does that not speak to innocence?
Here, the blood was confined to the area of the killing itself, which means somebody prepared for the killing in some ways, had something to put the murder weapon in after committing the murder so that it wouldn't drip blood to other areas.
So in court, Prosecutor Strunsky concentrates on what he does have. Lots of incriminating circumstantial evidence, beginning with what he considers his best witness, Kelle Jarka, in the interrogation room.
So, please tell me what you remember.
Got up this morning, started getting, calls from work, and I went to get formula and Starbucks.
This part of Kelle Jarka's account of how the murder morning began can be documented. Police quickly get the surveillance tapes at both the Long's Drugs, where he bought baby formula, and then moments later, he's at the Starbucks buying himself a coffee and his wife a latte. But phone records subpoenaed by detectives show he did not spend the early morning on the telephone, as he told Detective Gomez. The DA's chief investigator, Rodney Bishop, went over the printouts.
He didn't make phone calls?
No, he did not. I personally spoke to every single person that tried to get a hold of him that morning. And these people did not speak with him, didn't get a hold of him, and thought that was odd.
So contrary to what he was telling you, not only was not on the phone, he wasn't answering the phone.
He was not taking the phone calls, no.
Next, the detectives go after the story of how Kelle says he first noticed signs of a break-in.
And the door inside the house I saw was open.
Open how?
Like cracked open. And then I saw the door that comes from the outside to the garage was open also.
In fact, that door from the side yard into the garage where the burglar supposedly came in appears to have been forced open, kicked in, leaving wood fragments on the garage floor. But police believe that Jarka kicked in that door to fake the burglary, because on the bumper of the car Kelle says he was using at the time his wife was being murdered by a burglar is a small paint chip that matches the door frame.
Which would indicate that when that door was forced open and the door jamb falls onto the car that's already parked there, Mr. Jarka's vehicle, that's where the paint transfer came from.
So the car was there, presumably he was there.
Correct.
And the police are especially skeptical of Kelle Jarka's next take.
And I see like everything's torn apart. The drawers were pulled out, her jewelry cabinet was all thrown around.
The kitchen area.
Going in and seeing the scene and starting to think, hey, this looks staged. There were a great deal of drawers in the kitchen, the bedroom, that had been taken out and actually removed from their track. It was odd that somebody took the time to actually remove these from the mechanism.
They also think it's strange that the phantom burglar, as they call him, left behind $500 in a bedside table and a laptop computer, while taking a much heavier and more difficult-to-sell desktop computer tower. But all that pales to this bombshell. What the prosecutor says is the clear motive for Isabelle Jarka's death.
He did it to make $1.3 million in insurance.
3 weeks before Isabelle was murdered, Kelle Jarka arranged for 3 new insurance policies on the wife he had never insured before. He is vague about them during his interrogation.
I don't even know who the policy is. We had a friend who got sick like a year or something ago, a different friend. And so she wanted me to get life insurance and everything. But that's recently. It's probably not even in effect yet. I don't know.
But the policies were in effect when Isabelle died, and while Jarka told police he didn't know where his wife kept them, the documents were found in a file cabinet with his, not Isabelle's, fingerprints on them.
You would have to be an idiot to take out life insurance on somebody 3 weeks before. I don't know how anyone would think that they could do that and get away with it.
But the prosecution claims Jarka was desperate enough to be reckless, high living, leaving him deeply in debt, He shows the jury this bank letter dated days before the murder, warning him that he is in default, 2 months behind on his mortgage.
Things were really coming down to the wire as far as foreclosure on the house.
And Isabelle's mother says there was enough financial stress at home for her daughter to openly threaten divorce.
Mom, if I go, me and my kids to your house to live with you guys, do you agree for me to stay there? And I say, of course.
Not enough incriminating circumstantial evidence yet? Here's another smoking gun. One of those laptops left behind is jammed with suspicious entries.
Those searches give you a glimpse into the mind of a psychopath. The thought process that goes into even thinking about how many ways that he could kill his wife shows a demented resolve and planning to end Isabelle's life.
Among the shocking Google searches, poisons that cause instant death, how long to medically suffocate, how to drug overdose, can you suffocate from a pillow, cyanide and suicide, can a BB gun kill you, how long does it take to suffocate, the best way to die, and how long to wait to remarry.
Chilling. I mean, what kind of calculated malignant mind is able to come up with this many unique ways to kill somebody?
Even Jarka's own public defender, Aaron Kirkpatrick, was shocked by what was found on Kelle's computer.
It's very harmful. When I saw the computer searches at first, I was very concerned. But just the computer searches alone is not enough evidence.
Kelle Jarka spent a year in jail waiting for trial, and then never took the stand to defend himself or proclaim his innocence. But he does sit down with 2020, and when we return, the fallen minister's first interview as we confront him with the evidence.
Why would she be asking these questions?
It all seems so far away.
There you go.
The Jarka's 19 years of happy marriage, suddenly a distant memory.
911, what is your emergency?
Marred by Isabelle's murder and the May 2008 arrest of her husband, Kelle. A nightmare that began with the early morning discovery of her body, as Kelle Jarka told police just an hour later.
I ran over there and it's, hey, what's, you know, and I couldn't move her.
Did you end up rolling her over?
No.
What did you notice about her head?
Just that it was in all the blood.
Do you think she was dead?
Yeah, I thought she was shot or something happened.
Is this a guilty man talking?
How do you forget that you had to step over your wife's body, get your baby, come back with your baby, and then step over your wife's body again?
Right.
He left all that part out.
The detectives say they are struck by his lack of emotion and odd behavior. They think it's circumstantial evidence of guilt.
Everything is pointing towards you.
I want to get a reaction from Mr. Jarka. An innocent person is not going to let me sit there and accuse them of brutally murdering their wife of 19 years.
No,
Jarka says that's not true at all, that Gomez had already made up his mind and would not listen to his pleas of innocence. Watch.
Okay?
I didn't do anything.
Listen to me right now, okay? I'm telling you right now, don't, okay? Don't tell me that you didn't know what was going on. Don't tell me you didn't have anything to do with this. Don't tell me that you didn't do anything. You can't tell me that because I'm not going to believe you and neither is anyone else.
Were the police rushing to judgment? Jarka holds to his story even when Detective Gomez lies, as police are allowed to by law during interrogations, claiming forensic and direct evidence that simply did not exist.
I'm telling you, there's all kinds of trace evidence out there. There's evidence under fingernails. There's evidence in carpet. There's evidence in beds. There's evidence all over the place, okay?
What was the evidence against you?
There was none. No physical evidence.
They didn't find your DNA on your wife?
No.
Any hairs, fibers?
No.
To find the murder weapon?
No. They tested me as soon as I was interviewed for DNA swabs, fingernails, hair, everything. I had no altercation marks or whatever on me. No blood, anything like that.
And were there clothes found in your house with blood on them?
No.
How about the drains? Were those looked at?
Yeah.
Did they find any blood?
Nothing.
How about any bleach that might have been used to destroy the blood?
Nothing.
So there's no physical evidence that you either were covered with blood or tried to get rid of the blood in your house?
Correct, as well as in our vehicles.
But what about all that damning circumstantial evidence? Kelle Jarka says the prosecution exaggerated his financial troubles, and in fact, a careful read of Jarka's record shows he was not in any danger of imminent foreclosure. Defense attorney Aaron Kirkpatrick.
And then he make a payment, might get a little behind, but not dire.
So was it fair to tell the jury that he was desperate and was being foreclosed upon?
Absolutely not, because there's no evidence of it.
Despite what his mother-in-law says, Kelle Jarka denies any serious marital trouble. And in fact, Isabelle had never asked her church or a lawyer about divorce. Police were never called to the house for domestic violence.
We never discussed divorce. We just had a 6-month-old baby. We were happy.
But what possible explanation could he have for those sinister computer entries about death, remarriage, and insurance payouts? First, he says the computer had no password on it and claims his wife made those horrific searches.
Who was asking these questions then?
I would have to say Isabelle.
You know this woman pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Why would she be asking these questions?
We did co-sleeping with our baby. She was concerned for his safety as far as suffocation, things like that. Wanted to remarry after death. She had a friend who lost her husband in death.
But there's a lot here about how to kill someone.
There were also searches at that exact same time for things that only Isabelle would search for. Beading, how to make necklaces, stores like Claire's, I think is one of them.
Piles and piles of circumstantial evidence, a 3-week trial filled with it, but nothing to connect Kelle Jarka directly to the murder.
Are you surprised that you can go to prison for the rest of your life on circumstantial evidence alone?
Very. To be able to convict someone of a crime when there's no evidence against them other than a theory is unthinkable, especially in something so serious as this.
You must impartially compare and consider all the evidence that was received throughout the entire trial.
And just before the jury is sent to deliberate, a powerful message from the judge that should help Kelle about how circumstantial evidence is to be used.
If there are 2 reasonable interpretations to that circumstantial evidence, and one of those interpretations points toward innocence, they must accept the one that points toward innocence.
What would the jury do? Had Kelle Jarka's defense given a reasonable interpretation for the insurance, the debt, the marriage problems, and those ominous computer searches?
The jury has reached the verdict, is that correct?
Yes, we have.
The verdict, and we talked to the jury.
You've got several damning pieces of circumstantial evidence that point to the husband, but you still don't have the smoking gun.
No, we did not.
When 2020 returns.
That concept.
He made some whimpering sounds, and he sniffed a few times. There was not one tear or even the beginning stages of tears in his eyes.
He doesn't show any true sorrow, any true emotion, any true care that his wife is dead.
The cornerstone of the case against Kelle Jarka is that he is a fake. Fake tears, fake burglary, fake alibi.
He turns the tears on and off. We saw
And
that.
the jury, according to Foreman Ron Fournier, says the lies added up to guilt.
Because there was no smoking gun, no eyewitness, no bloody clothes, no bloody murder weapon. But after 3 weeks of day after day after day being exposed to one lie after another, it just kept adding up that this nice gentleman sitting over here could have done it. He's the only one that could have done it.
We, the jury, find the defendant.
And it took the jury just 3.5 hours to find a surprise Kelle Jarka guilty of first-degree murder.
There was no dissension on anything. Not one person said, yeah, but a burglar could have done that. Not one.
Bill's family for
The prosecution strategy worked. Destroy the alibi and you destroy the defendant. Kelle Jarka, in his 10-hour interview that began 45 minutes after his wife's murder, was their best witness.
He essentially presented, for me as a prosecutor, two possible stories. One, this is a burglary in which Isabelle Jarka is killed, and two, the husband, Kelle Jarka, killed her. So if we could disprove that this was in fact a burglary, the only other option open at that point would be that Kelle Jarka was the murderer.
At the sentencing hearing early this month, his life in ruins, his ministry shattered, his children taken away and given to their aunt, Kelle Jarka made one final attempt at judicial mercy, sticking to his story that he was framed by circumstance and overzealous police for a crime he could never commit.
Tragically, I've been accused of this horrendous crime, and that sickens me. Such a horrible thought cannot even come up into my mind or my heart.
And now, with plenty of tears in his eyes, he professes his love for the wife he will never see again.
My heart aches constantly. I long for her smile, her touch, her smell, her love.
But the last word comes from the judge. Unimpressed by the lack of direct evidence, he tells Jarka the circumstantial was overwhelming.
And the defendant's conduct and his actions of murdering his wife of nearly 2 decades, and the planning and the deliberation, the deception, and coupled with that brutality and that violence and those horrific injuries that he inflicted on his wife, are chilling and disturbing.
Finally, after chastising Kelle Jarka for showing no remorse, he sent the fallen minister off to life in prison without parole, with these words ringing in his ears.
The court can't offer any reason, any comfort other than to say pure evil. That's all it is pure evil. People are going to remember this case because they're going to reflect for a moment. They're going to tremble when they hear the name People versus Kelle Jarka.